talk about our second topic, which focuses on the local government issue, leadership, governance at the local level. That's the second discussion we have right now, gentlemen. I want to begin with you again, Jarrett. They say security, every security is local, and yet we don't seem to be paying so much of attention to administration at the local government level. I mean, as relatively as young as I am, growing up, I remember then local government elections were more like fireworks. But these days, I don't think that's the case. There has been a lot of shifts along that line. People talk about how the local governments are now strung to the aprons of state governors and so on and so forth. But again, I've spoken to lawyers about this. Some of these lawyers had also been local government chairmen at some point, and they say that the real problem is constitutional. Until we change certain elements in our constitution, we can't get it right with the local governments. Can we just have superficial local governments that are only nominal but have little or no impact on governance?
Well, the problem we have is, yes, the local governments are tied to the aprons of the state government. But one thing is clear. It depends on the governors, because they see local government now as cash cows they could just make just like that. In some states, they will not even want to do election. Like in Edo State, I'm not sure there's going to be election till 2023.
What makes you feel so? In Edo State?
In Edo State.
What's the reason for that?
Local government. Because the last chairmen that were removed, that were dissolved, there was an arrangement whereby they made them to sign a document of monies to be withdrawn from their allocation before it gets to them every month.
But we never saw that on the news.
Yes, it happened. It's happening. I'm saying it clearly now.
Again, that's not something we can substantiate, obviously.
You can substantiate it. Then, most of the local government council chairmen were grumbling about it. And I think it's because of that most of them were removed. Halfway, you can even see judgment.
So we can't say it's because they served out their tenure?
No, so we even removed before their tenure. As I speak, deductions of 35 million is made from every local government in this state.
As it stands right now?
As it stands right now, on a monthly basis. And that brings it to about 630 million every month they deduct from local government. And that is money they were supposed to use for other things. That is crippling them. So they just feel it is better for us to have head of service in the various local government that are civil servants that won't talk. Because if you have elected chairmen there, they'll be responsible to the people who voted for them. But right now, nobody is voted for. The civil servants are just there. So anything you like, you do. They cannot do anything because they are part of government. So withdrawals is happening. And the fraud that is going on right now is enormous.
At the local government level?
At the local government level. A lot of withdrawals.
But isn't that what makes it a constitutional problem, really? Because the governor, at his discretion, can decide not to conduct elections at the local government level for 4 years, and there's little or nothing you can do about that because the constitution leaves a crack of some sort.
There is something you can do. That is why you have the House of Assembly. If you have a proper House of Assembly, they will moderate the governor to conduct election.
If you have a proper
House of Assembly. But as I speak in Edo today, 9 members, we are operating an illegal government. 14 members are not there. So they don't even have a quorum to even sit or take decisions. So at the end of the day, we are operating an illegal government in Edo State. Who is even going to clear the commissioners? Now, 9 members, he's sending list of commissioners to the House. 9 members will clear commissioners. And as I speak, the 14 elected members that won their various elections, and they passed through the court, tribunals, and those people are in court, and the court are also part of the people, part of the government machine that is delaying the matter because of frivolous, irregular adjournments.
Have events not overtaken the issue of those members who didn't show up for inauguration?
Events have not overtaken it because they're in court. The reason is this. They went to court to challenge that no letter was sent to them because the inauguration happened in the night in the night, about 9 o'clock in the night, 3 days after the letter of the governor for inauguration came. So what they are saying, what they are challenging in court is they did not get that letter. So that's why they are in court. Because it's a state court, you have series of adjournment that has been happening. They were adjourned for 1 month, they were adjourned for 2 months. It's getting to about how many months? About 2 years now, that you have an elected people, they were not sworn in. And the entire states are watching. Even the press, they're not helping issues.
But isn't that the reason? Isn't that the reason we're having this conversation this morning? But
yeah, well, that's why.
I wanted to catch your breath a little. I'm going to get back to you, but let me talk to Chris about this. I mean, he just made some very weighty allegations as to how that we are running an illegal government in Edo State. Of course, Governor Obaseki was overwhelmingly voted last year into office, the 2020 election in Edo State. So, but he is particular about the House of Assembly because according to him, there's no quorum to have to even sit in the first instance, and more particularly, he's concerned about the fact that they also don't have validity and legality to, as it were, screen commissioner nominees whose names the governor has sent to the House of Assembly already as it stands right now. What would be your response to that?
Well, with all due respect to Mr. Tenebe, I don't want to say that it's a bit contradictory, because if they are in court and you begin to discuss the outcome, is the lawyers will say sub judice. So I think it's the court that will determine whether what you have now is the House of Assembly,
or
and
not.
Yes or not, and whether they have the powers to be able to do all of this. So I would rather wait until they have that final judgment in court. But
you're going to argue.
But the way I know it is that in Edo State, every day, legislative business have been going on. I mean, Marcus Onobu is the Speaker of the House of Assembly in Edo State, and he attends speakers' meetings, and it's recognized. He carries out all the functions. Nobody has challenged that. So if you see this in court, I'm sure when the court eventually makes pronouncements, then we'll be able to know whether these House of Assembly is valid or not. Well, I thought we were talking about local government.
Yes,
administration and all that. So I thought I should just bring in that conversation because it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it is.
It is not just in Edo State. We have 774 local governments across the country, and it's been an issue, since the 1916 ordinance. What we call the 1916 Native Authority Ordinance. And then you fast forward back to the 1976, because that had been the most impactful reforms on the local government administration in Nigeria, the 1976, reform, and which laid out, what local governments should be, but they didn't have a legal framework. So it was 1979 Constitution that gave legal framework to local government. And the 1979 Constitution is the one that created all the problems you had said the lawyers are referring to. Now, Section 7, 1 of the Constitution makes it very clear that the local government administration is the responsibility of state governments to set up by a law.
Wholesale.
Yes. Now, but in the same breath and within the same section, it also recommended that the federal legislature, that is the Federal House of Assembly, should work out formula for revenue allocation to local government and give that same function also to the states. So there are so many provisions between that Section 7, Section 8, 162 of the Constitution that creates a lot of contradictions. But if you take all of those sections together, what you eventually arrive at is that the local government was conceived by the framers of the Constitution to be an administrative unit under state governments, and administrative units. The problem came when it was now perceived or conceived theoretically to be the third tier of government, not an administrative unit, but the third tier of government.
Yes.
But why the name, the third tier of government, was given to it, the Constitution did not practically assign statutory role to the local government areas. So the local government does not have statutory, role in our Constitution. If you read, I think, Section 42 of our Constitution, a very long section from 42 to about 209, the roles of the president, the House of Assembly and the federal legislature were clearly spread out. The assignments were clearly spread out. So they derive their power from the Constitution. But the local government area derive its power from the states, from the state governments. Now, if you go to the second schedule of our Constitution, where we are talking about the exclusive list and the concurrent list, local government was not mentioned there. There was no constitutional assigned roles, apart from a list of things to do in the fourth schedule. And even in that fourth schedule where you have that list of things to do, it still ended by saying, and any other roles as might be assigned to it by the state government. So the mentality of those who framed the Constitution, their mindset, as I think, because it came from the centrality of the military, local government system.
Obviously.
So that mindset was still operating. So they had already weakened the power of the local government even at creation. Now, to put the nail on the coffin, in section 8, I think, when in 1999 Constitution, when they now tried to do 1988 reform, it was now suggested that local government and states should have a joint account, what they call the SJLA-LGA.
Right.
Yes, the state joint local government account. That's where the big problem came. Now, that again, in effect, is subordinating the local government to the states. Because the money comes not directly to the local government area, but to that joint account. And from that joint account, the state is supposed to remit that of the local government area. It was supposed to be a supervisory role, really. But it's also created room for all the abuses that we find. So, in my opinion, to be very honest with you, it is confusion in federalism to have 3 tiers of government. All over the world, you have local administrations.
Administration?
Yes. You have mayorias, you have counties, you have local administrations. But when you now want to say it is a government, the Constitution must define. It's true, and give it statutory powers.
Which has not happened.
Which has not happened. So, it's neither here nor there. So, it's not subject to discretionary powers, which is subject to abuses, as we find it. So, we need to do 2 things. It's either that the Constitution will now do this, and then local government will not derive its powers from the Constitution, or we convert them to administrative units for ease and convenience of ruling. Because if you take proper political analysis of federalism, you can only have a federal state and component units, which is the state government.
The subnational.
Yes, the subnational. Are you following me? So local government is strange to it. But Nigeria was about to create a model which was hailed as a model that will bring administration and bring popular participation to the rural area and to and grassroots. Now, before I end, between 1988 and 2012, the local government had no interference whatsoever. It was a free, they had free hand to do whatever they could do. I remember then, my local government area, the chairman. What did the local government do that time? There are no impacts. That's the functional part, that's the practical part. There are no impacts of development from that long period of time from the local government. The states still need to come to my local government to tar the roads, to work in the markets and all of that. Local government became fiefdoms. So when you hear a particular local government chairman in the morning, you see everybody in his compound. And then they dealt with their cronies and wanted contracts and all of that. That's what they were doing. So I think we might not even be ripe enough for local governments.
As it stands.
As it stands. What I think we are ripe for is local administrative units. Let us have the 2 tiers of government, the federal and the sub-regional, which is the states. And then people will do election to those local administrative units. The state will recognize that election, but has its own way, templates of assigning resources and then getting feedbacks on whether those resources have been properly utilized. Because even at this one that we are saying that they have muzzled local government area and then you hardly have money, the little that comes to their hand, the local government chairman are the richest people in the local governments. Half of the time you go there, they are not in the offices. The local government staff are the most rude set of people you can come across. There is nothing happening by way of any initiative. The money they say they don't have, they are building big houses. We see them, they are local government, so we know them. Some will be local government area in Norway, they stay in Benin. So they have not even justified, those who have functioned, have not justified that, look, there is an initiative here, an idea here, and a concept here that works. It is just that the state government is the problem. So, and that's why I say we might not be mature for it. If the administrative units and they have templates and targets given, and then we have that culture entrenched, we can now virtually graduate into making it a government.
Thank you. Jared, let's talk about the administrative part of the local government arrangement. Some persons have said we shouldn't be too emotional and keen on this issue of elections at the local government level. After all, you have head of local government administration in each local government already. The important thing they argue is that we have a local government that's running. You can pay salaries, you can do the basics expected of a local government system. But then again, what implications does it have when elections are not conducted into these offices, where you don't have executive chairman in these local governments?
Yeah, you see, the problems you have there is you have civil servants.
Career civil servants.
Career civil servants that will be in place. And the career civil servants are direct appendages of the state government. If you have elected people in the local government, you have a local government chairman, you have the councillors, that you have the legislative arm, you have the executive arm.
Right.
And the legislative arm checkmates the chairman, it moderates him, and you see things working. And while they were going around to campaign to be elected, they made promises in their local government.
All right.
So when they are elected, they must meet up with all of those things they promised. And if you are unable to meet up with it, because you are looking at possibly maybe you want to be re-elected again, so you would work to ensure that you are re-elected. So by so doing, things will go on, development will go on. I was a product of a local government. I worked in the local government as a head superintendent in Esako West local government. It was the entire Esako then. It was not divided then. I know the way things were working. Local government used to do a lot of things. We used to have a works department that goes to patch roads when you have bad roads, the sweep roads, environmental sanitation, and the rest of it all.
Markets
we used to have them. Okay, now they are talking about the COVID-19 vaccines. Is there any awareness? People don't want to take the vaccine. That is the direct responsibility of the local government to create that awareness. I remember that time when they do vaccination for BCG and the rest of vaccination at that time. I know the awareness that was created as at that time by local government. Because this thing is at the local level. Because at the local level now, if you get to the local government, if you try to tell them anything about vaccination, they want to run. Because they will tell you that when you get vaccinated, this will happen, that will happen. But if that awareness was created, everybody will go and take the vaccine. But as it stands, if you don't have elected people to man local government, you will have that problem of non-performance.
There are people not saying that the conduct of local government elections should be left to INEC. Those calls have become a bit louder lately. Do you share that sentiment?
Yes. The reason is because if you leave it to INEC to conduct, INEC will conduct a proper election. Not the one that the state INEC will go and conduct election before they will start voting, they will start announcing results. It happens. We've seen it. We've seen it happen here. If you look at it, you discover that any government, any party that is at the center in the state is definitely going to win in all the local governments.
Is that tradition healthy for us?
It's very wrong. It's very wrong. That's why many people, including me, we are saying that they should allow INEC to conduct local government council elections.
But there's a constitutional position on this issue of whether or not it should be local government or the state's electoral commission, because as it stands right now, INEC probably does not have the latitude to conduct elections at the state.
No, they don't. That's why my brother support what he was saying, Chris. I support what he was saying, that they have to revisit the constitution to make local government derive their powers from the constitution, and also put it there that the state INEC should cancel the state INEC and allow the national INEC to conduct all elections. It's a constitutional matter which has to be looked into. Okay,
great. Chris, as we begin to wrap up now, let's talk about several other elements, including transparency at the local government level. Every time you talk about embezzlement of funds, public funds, that is, you talk about misappropriation and so on and so forth. Eyes would always go to state governors, to those at the federal level, and so on and so forth. How do we do more spotlighting on the local governments in such a way that those who head these local governments, whether they are executive chairmen, I mean those who are elected, or they are head of local government administration, for example, become more aware of the fact that eyes are on them, and then they are able to do more for the local government, deliver more value, real-time value to the people, and then they sit up to face the responsibility of their officers?
You see, that's your question is very complex, and that's why I told you just now that we probably are not ripe for it. Now, the people who are supposed to be watchdogs are the populace, the voters who voted them. They're the ones that are supposed to be watchdogs. And then you have councillors who are representing wards. Nothing can be more grassroots than our local government structure the way it is right now. Every single community is represented in the local government. But now, once you have what we call a majoritarian conspiracy, where everybody now conspires to do the same thing, and they are the elite of the local government, so it's going to check them. You get the point? So that's where you have the problem. So it is when a society is enlightened, the citizenry is enlightened, that the citizenry themselves, who are non-politicians, who are not part of the local government administration, can ask questions and say, look, these are our templates for which we voted you. What are you doing? So it's a big problem. It's not an easy one. When he said they perform, I just remember that, yes, there was a time the local governments were performing. But I suspect that they were under a military regime. That they were under military regime. So that, you understand that? But as soon as it was handed back to politicians and civilians, that we had these problems. So, I mean, we had this in the name of democracy, because democracy is supposed to be, you know, a liberal concept that has a lot to do with your discipline, your trainings, your education, and your conscience. So, but also because of the liberalism element in it. But if you leave it to people who don't have all of these things I have mentioned, you use the name democracy to do a lot of undemocratic practices. So when people just argue on paper and say, no, local government, we have to interrogate whether what we have in place that we call local government actually governments one, and whether they're actually doing the work for which they are appointed. It's no. That's the truth.
All right, Tenebe, just to conclude now, let's talk about going forward, what we should be looking at. Because whether you like it or not, state governors are quote unquote in charge of the local governments, I mean directly or indirectly, across this country. For instance, we've seen states that have not had local government elections in a long while. We've seen states where the governor can wake up on the wrong side of bed and decide to, as it were, just dissolve local councils, sometimes for political reasons, even in certain states, for instance. While on the one hand, there are those who argue that there's a vacuum in the event that you don't conduct local government elections. Of course, there are those who say there's no problem with that. But as it stands right now, let's deal with reality. We have heads of local government administration across the 18 local governments in Edo State. Is there anything they can do beyond what they're already doing right now?
Well, right now in Edo State, I will tell you their hands are tied.
Even with the IGR, you know, local governments also generate their own
their hands are tied. The reason being that the deduction that is happening from source, from the state, monies that is supposed to go to them, most of them can't even pay salary.
For the federal allocation?
Yes, most of them can't even pay salary. You can imagine when a local government is aware, because once the allocation comes, everybody will know what is coming.
Of course.
Okay. Take, for example, a local government knows that he's expecting 100 million. And at the end of the day, 65 million comes. What do you expect him to do?
Can you not augment with the internally generated revenue?
What are they generating? Because even the state government are the people that will system people. And from Mesako West local government, we have a lot of worry in our area.
Yes.
In our area. And you still see state government are the people collecting the revenue, not even the local government. State government are the ones collecting the revenue. So the local government are collecting stipends. That's the truth. And once that allocation comes and they see the deduction that is coming from the state, what do you expect the person there to do? He will also make his own deduction.
Of course.
And at the end of the day, the people at the grassroots.
So it's going to be a chain of deductions.
So it's a chain of deduction that happens. That's what is happening in this state right now. And people must come out to talk. And many people are so afraid to talk now.
Isn't that what democracy is about?
Because when you talk,
I mean, it's supposed to be all-inclusive.
When you talk, they destroy your house. When you talk, they revoke your land. So people are so scared to talk in Edo State right now. I'm talking here because I don't have a house in Benin. No, I'm not sure anybody can come to my village to go and destroy my house. That's the reason why I can talk now. People are scared to talk. What is going on in Edo State must stop.
Okay.
It wasn't like this before.
I think this is what we're going to leave it, gentlemen. But I think Chris wants to respond to that in a minute or something. The idea of people not talking. Yes, when it comes to maybe issues around government and so on and so forth.
He should be talking because I'm sure he also does not have a land here.
Well, we have not done an inventory of his landed property.
Let me tell you one reason why people don't talk about things. You know, people don't get information and data.
Okay.
When you want to make accusations, be armed with information and data.
By all means.
Yeah, so that you know, you could talk libelously and you could slander.
And you pay dearly for it.
You pay dearly for it. So, but when you have the information, and that's why I said, I think in the last program I called in, I said people should go and dig out information so that you know what is the correct state of things. Then you can talk. For instance, now, I mean, with all due respect, all that has been said here are speculations because we don't have, you know, data before to say this is what's going on. I'm not saying I'm not telling you why people. Yes.
I'm not speculating.
Okay.
I have data for everything I say here.
Okay.
I have informations on the deductions in local government and what is going on. I have them.
Hopefully, in no time we're going to have time to look at those pieces of data you say you have, and we'll check it out against what the facts really are on the ground. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Jared Tanebe, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And Christopher Jekere, thank you also for coming to share with us on the program this morning. This is what we're living it. We'll have a couple more interviews to come on TMI. Stay with me.